being here today. Great discussion on the regulatory environment. I would use the word hobbling. If you've ever seen a horse hobbled and the inability to move. We have a hobbled economy because of a regulatory front that it runs counter to the rule of law. I heard Mr. Harris talk about the rule of law. Article 1, Section 1, U.S. Constitution says all legislative powers be vested in the Congress. And so for many years, we were the world reserve currency status and perceived as such, in part to the truth of what you said, because we adhered to the rule of law. But in an environment where we have cubicle decisions, people that in their desk in front of their computer screen are making decisions, not elected representatives that are sent to Washington to represent the people, now we have a hobbled economy. And so some would say, well, things from the Democrat viewpoint, that they're seeing upticks in certain statistics that they can pick. Can you imagine what would happen if we would unleash the wisdom of our founding fathers and return power and decision-making back to the states? And I'm so grateful for a panel that, for the most part, has been talking about that. So I'm going to give three numbers: 13,000, 14,000, and 18,000. 13,000 is how much real incomes would be higher per person had regulations remained at the 1980 levels, according to a study by Mercatus Center. That is about $4 trillion that would have been added to our GDP that hovers between 22 trillion and 25 trillion. It's almost 1/5 increase in our GDP. So 13,000, how much real incomes would be higher per person had regulations remained at 1980 levels. By the way, that's about the time we tripped 1 trillion in gross national indebtedness. 1 trillion, now we're at 31.5. Give you another number, 14,000. That's how much each American household pays right now annually for government regulation, or 1.9 trillion annually according to the Center by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. 18,800. That's how much it would cost someone to print the entire code of federal regulations at FedEx. Because, as mentioned, in 2021, the Code of Federal Regulations is 188,321 pages. In 1960, it was 22,877 pages. In 1950, it was just under 10,000 pages, or just 5% of the figure from 2021. The total estimated cost of 2023 economic significant regulations range from $55 billion to $78 billion, according to self-reported information by agencies. And what are some of these regulations? American people have a right to ask that. From this month, early this month, here's a federal regulation. Toy gun markings from the Department of Commerce to the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Updated safety standards for bedside sleepers, surface coating operation for cars and light-duty trucks, national standards for real estate inspection. The Agricultural Department is adjusting its civil penalties for inflation, non-aeronautical airport closure procedures, and in California, air quality management from the EPA. It was mentioned that there's $120 billion worth of regulations, 150 right now under the Biden administration. So that's the cost of regulatory adherence. It was $15 billion under Trump. It was $120 billion under the Obama administration. So many of these regulations come in because of the climate ideology. So, Mr. Harris, I am going to ask you a question. In your opening statement, you mentioned the word hurricane. And I know it'd be tough to maybe flip to that, but I think what you said, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, that the disruption you all are looking at, and you just left the Biden administration, that you're looking at economic disruption. I think you mentioned hurricanes is caused by climate change. Is that correct? Did I remember your statement correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to read something to you because I think it's so important how many of our federal regulations are adherence to the climate ideology. So I'm going to read to you from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They state there is no consensus, quote, no consensus on the role of human activity on changes to Atlantic hurricane activity. That same body, the United Nations body, says also determined that since 1900, there's been no trend in the amount of landfall events in the United States. I could go through from the United Nations panel on floods, same thing, no increase on trends in frequency. When it comes to extreme temperature, I mean, the science is being tossed on its head, whereas a few years ago we were talking about 4 and 5 degrees. Now we're talking about 2. Here's what I wanted to land the plane by saying. The narrative is out there, and we're sacrificing our prosperity on the altar of the church of nature. And we've got to push back. We've got a 200-300-year supply of oil and gas into this country, and we have got to start fighting with both fists. If we don't, China and Russia will continue to laugh at us while they don't appease the Paris Climate Accord. With that, I yield, Mr. Chairman.